Welcome to FWA Review. This week I'm with Oliver Kay, the chief football correspondent of The Times. We're at Old Trafford, just following Jose Mourinho's press conference ahead of the big Champions League game against Valencia. And really there's only one place to start, the story of the weekend, the story of the moment.
Yep.
Jose, Paul Pogba, Man United. Ollie.
Yeah, it feels quite familiar if we cast our minds back to Chelsea 3 seasons ago. Everybody's talking again about Jose Mourinho and third season syndrome. This press conference was obviously about the Valencia Champions League match tomorrow, and yet all the questions really are about the general form, the general mood at Old Trafford, and what the problem is, what the answers are, whether Mourinho has got those solutions, and it just feels like the whole mood around Old Trafford is so negative. You look at their past 3 home games in particular. Tottenham, they started well, and then lost, conceded 3 second half goals. Then the Wolves 1-1, then Derby in the Carabao Cup, and it just, I don't know, all of those matches I think show some kind of anxiety at United, and they really, against Valencia, they really need to produce something different.
I think we were looking to see if there was going to be a response on Saturday after everything that happened in the last week or two against West Ham, but that really didn't look like the case, did it?
No, it's funny, some of their games recently, the game against Tottenham, when they had their backs against the wall, they started very well. They started very well against away to Burnley and played well that day, played well at Watford, started well against Wolves, started well against Derby, but against West Ham, from start to finish, it was just really poor. It was awful. I mean, Luke Shaw used the word horrendous, didn't he? And it was just a strange lineup that Mourinho picked. I think that's not being wise after the event. I think everybody, whether they are a journalist or a Manchester United fan or an opposition fan, would have looked at that and thinking, well, apart from trying to stop them score at corners, what's the game plan here? Because it was just full of their tallest, slowest, most cumbersome players. It was just a really strange lineup, strange performance, no intensity, no guile, no flair, no energy. Really worrying for United, and they clearly need something very different, not just against Valencia, which I think is a winnable game in the Champions League, not just against Newcastle at the weekend, but every week now. I mean, there's so much up against it in the Premier League. They really just have to go on a real run, and not only go on an unbeaten run like we know they're capable of doing, but I think produce better performances and better quality, something more recognisable as a Manchester United team, because at the moment their performances are just really poor a lot of the time.
And I mean, Jose's obviously today in the press conference, he's got a sense of humour. When he was asked by a Spanish journalist, what about the story that you've been speaking to Zidane, he pointed out one of our colleagues, didn't he?
Yeah, he pointed to Neil Custis and said, you ask him, he wrote it. He then suggested that Neil had a bug in his phone, which I think we've probably gone beyond the point where that's near the knuckle as far as journalists are concerned. But it was an evasive response, wasn't it? I mean, he could have said, if he wanted, he could have just killed that stone dead and said, no, I haven't spoken to Zidane. His response made me think maybe he has spoken to Zidane. I mean, there's no cause to doubt what Neil's written. Neil's a very well connected journalist, and that I expect it was one of those stories that a lot of people would think, oh, well, is that right? And his response, Mourinho's response, made me more inclined to believe that it was right. And,
there is something to it,
and that maybe Zidane, which would, I think, be the right and honourable thing to do, and we've known people do it in our industry when they've been sort of touted for jobs that they know other people who are already in. The suggestion that Zidane has spoken to Mourinho to try to reassure him, which, if so, that good for Zidane for doing that. But Mourinho certainly wasn't poo-pooing that suggestion. And then he was asked whether he had spoken to Ed Woodward since Saturday, and he was saying, well, I don't ask you private questions. I don't ask who the last person you spoke to was, and you think, well, we're not giving press conferences, we're not public figures. It is an interesting matter. It's a valid question, and I can understand why he didn't want to answer it. But yeah, he did show good humour today. But I think he also comes across as a man who's grasping really for just sort of increasingly thrashing around in search of answers.
I mean, you've covered United a long time. You've seen two managers gone since Sir Alex Ferguson's days. Do you think the parting of the ways is inevitable sooner rather than later?
I don't see there being a great value in changing manager mid-season unless things are utterly horrendous. And I feel quite horrendous at the moment, but it doesn't feel as much kind of beyond the point of no return as things felt at Chelsea. What was it, 3 years ago? I mean, that just felt...
Yeah, they were almost in the relegation zone.
They were almost in the relegation zone, and you know, sometimes they would... I remember going to a match when Chelsea played Norwich in probably November, and they won 1-0, and it still didn't feel like the start of anything. I think if United were to win against Valencia, win against Newcastle, obviously the mood would pick up a little bit. They've then got a really tough run of games coming up, Juventus twice in the Champions League, and I think there's a Manchester derby in there and Chelsea, and it's going to be a really tough run. I don't think, as things stand, I don't see the case for changing now. If I'm clear about this, I didn't ever think Mourinho was the right person for United, and I think everything I'm seeing this season, and plenty of what I saw the previous two seasons, even despite second place, despite winning a couple of cups, I don't think he's ever really shown that there's a clear vision of what Manchester United should be and what they aspire to be and what they need to be. But despite those reservations that I've had, I don't see a point in changing manager now, unless they felt that the manager that they want, the next manager that they want, is available and immediately. And whether that's Zidane or whether it's somebody in work at another club, they need to be working on a succession plan, because it's clear that there are problems, and those problems are most likely to be resolved by changing a manager. But I don't see there being a great point in changing manager now, unless things spiral even further out of control over the next few weeks. But yeah, it does seem bad, but maybe in the short term they should stick with Mourinho while doing some serious homework on who they want to be their next manager, whether that's in 6 weeks' time, 6 months' time, 18 months' time, whatever. They need to do the homework, because I don't think they've done the homework on the past 3 appointments.
Oh. And obviously what makes it worse is that Manchester City are such a dominant force now in English football and European football. Another impressive win at the weekend. They're clicking into gear again, aren't they? Still unbeaten. And the result at Stamford Bridge worked in their favour as well, didn't it? The draw
in City's favour, yes, but it was certainly a result, I think, that confirmed, I think, that both Liverpool and Chelsea are serious this season. I mean, obviously, Liverpool have got Man City at the weekend, and I think that will be another big test of Liverpool. But I think City are favourites. I think most people would say that City are favourites, but maybe the way Liverpool are playing, maybe the way Chelsea are playing, suggests that they will be pushed harder this season. And I've been really impressed by, I think Liverpool have rightly had a lot of plaudits for the way they've played. I think Chelsea have probably surprised people more, because if I go back even just to the Community Shield last season, in August, I know it's a really strong squad, and I know they underachieved last season, and I know people were expecting better from Chelsea, but I think everybody, including Sarri himself, felt that it was going to take longer for him to make his impact and make them into a sort of more front foot team, more energetic, intense team. And you see the way they played against Liverpool, the way they played pretty much every week. They look like a Sarri team already. They're not as perfect in the way they do it as his Napoli team were, but the Sarri effect is very visible. And it's weird how with Chelsea you get those slumps under various
Dips,
managers,
yeah.
Mourinho, Conte, etc. But it always seems that those players, even the previous group of players, they seem to react so well to change, and they seem to do that again. And Chelsea's fans should be very encouraged, I think, by what they're seeing.
And just one other big story that emerged at the weekend is talk of Peter Kenyon coming in with a bid for Newcastle, who clearly something needs to change there, doesn't it? Because they're in a real state.
Definitely. I would imagine that the Peter Kenyon thing, that he would be the front man for somebody, rather than it being he's not going to be the Mike Ashley. He's not going to be the money man. I mean, he's a very wealthy man from money he's made out of football, but he's become a sort of intermediary, really. Lots of connections in I think in China, in Portugal, in Brazil, and it's that kind of I'd be interested to find out who the people are behind him if this bid materialises, and I would go as far as to say that almost anybody would be an improvement on the Mike Ashley regime. And when I say almost anybody, it's just because there are always worse owners out there for football clubs these days. I mean, we've seen so many clubs in bad positions sold to people who have put them in even worse positions. I would imagine and hope that when Mike Ashley sells, it will be to somebody with, even somebody who was a kind of average owner, your typical kind of in it for the short term, wanting to just increase the value of it. But I think any change of ownership, almost any change of ownership, would be beneficial for Newcastle. There are some even worse owners out there, but I really hope that the next Newcastle owners are not that type. I really hope that whoever's behind Peter Kenyon, if this bid materialises, that they at least bring a sense of optimism and vision and ambition back to Newcastle, because that's the really depressing thing, I think, about a club that everyone can see the potential of them, but it's just being run with no ambition or purpose or
enthusiasm,
vision, love, passion, whatever at all. And they're not the only club in that position. There are so many clubs in the EFL who you could say that of. You could say that of this club, Manchester United. But yeah, I hope there's a positive and successful resolution to that sooner rather than later.
Fantastic. Ollie, thanks for your time, and we'll be looking out for some fantastic action this week. There's also Champions League, City in Germany with Hoffenheim, Tottenham, Barcelona at Wembley,
should be there.
Napoli, Liverpool. So huge games coming up, but a lot of eyes will be on Manchester United here
they
tomorrow.
Certainly will. Well, they always are, even if it's even if they're training, as we know from the last week, there are always eyes on Manchester United. But I imagine they're finding that scrutiny rather painful at the moment.
Good stuff. Okay, thanks, Ollie. See you later.